Car alarms. What a wonderful sound. Well, it is early morning, early Sunday morning, and I am attending to one of my tasks, which take place only twice a year, something that is very monotonous, kind of tedious, but that I actually really enjoy. I got up not too long ago, I just got right back to my desk because I have to package hundreds of greeting cards which arrived from the printer last week. So when I think back to over 13 years ago when I started my calligraphy business, one of the very first things that I decided to make were greeting cards. And I think this is a very common thing for artists. When artists decide that they're ready to pursue a business side of their work, I feel like greeting cards are a very good entry point because they're low stakes. You can make greeting cards fairly inexpensively, or you can make them expensively. I've received greeting cards from artists in my P.O. box, and some of them are just incredibly detailed, and the work that goes into them are amazing. My greeting cards over the years have changed, and currently I love these. I didn't plan that. That's just how it was. So the first greeting card that I created here in New York was this one, and this is a drawing that I did, which is it's a copy of a 19th century flourish, and it's something I've been studying for years. I've done this in chalk, and then I did this in pen and ink, and the pen and ink drawing that I did, I digitized it and sent it to a letterpress company, and they made this into a greeting card. Letterpress is a really beautiful technique where they create a plate. Originally it would have been metal. Now it's kind of like a synthetic silicone or plastic. And the plate is inked, and then it's pressed with heat into cotton paper, like pure cotton paper. And as the customer, I can decide the thickness of the paper. So I choose a really thick cotton paper, which feels very luxurious when you're holding it in your hand. And because the paper is thick and there's this intense pressure and heat applied when the ink is being pressed into the paper, it actually creates a dip in the paper, which you can feel if you run your hand over it. So there are 3 cards currently. There's the Flourished fish, there's the love card in anticipation of Valentine's Day, and there's a New York card. And these 2 cards are recent creations for me, so I'm really excited to get these out there. When I was doing these, the method I used, I wanted both of these cards to feel like my handwriting in my journal almost. I didn't want it to feel like it was every letter was just perfect calligraphy, because I feel like that's achievable on a computer. You can just type in the letters on a computer now and find a beautiful font that looks like handwriting, and every letter will be evenly spaced and will be perfect. So I felt like trying to achieve that by hand was kind of redundant for creating a card. So what I did was, I didn't know how I was going to do this, but I just one afternoon, I sat here with a stack of paper, and I just started writing the word love. And I would see, oh, I want to tweak this a little bit, and I would do it over and over again. But the key aspect I realized of what I wanted was speed. I wanted to write it quickly, and there was no point in doing it slowly and carefully, because it didn't capture what I was looking for. And that was just the immediacy of writing the word with confidence and technical ability. And I think I did about 30, like I wrote this about 30 times. And then there were about 4 or 5 of these that I liked. So I set them aside, and this is what I do. I put them up on the wall, and I look at them for a day. I come into my room, look at them, kind of think, oh, I think this is the one. And then I just really give myself the time to contemplate which one I think is best. And it ended up being this one. I see the little things in here that might be called flaws, but that's what I really love about this design. Like, for example, I will point out one, the E between the space between the V and the E is slightly too large. If you look at the space between the O and the V, it is smaller than the space between the V and the E. And technically, for sort of balance sake, the space should be the size of this space between the O and the V. And so, I mean, that was one of the things that I noticed when I was just looking at the design on the wall for that entire day. It's like, yeah, that's a mistake. But that came from writing this rapidly and not overthinking it. So that's this card. And then this card is kind of niche. When I think about this being sold commercially, there isn't as much of a market as there is for this card. And this has even less of a market than this card. They're all blank on the inside. But living here in New York, I have written this name, the name of the city, so many times, even on the return address of a letter that's going across the world to Munich or Ireland. And this design of New York is actually inspired by writing that I saw in an Old Penmanship book, a book teaching a certain type of penmanship. And I loved the way this N curled around the EW. And then I love that, the sort of hook of the Y. So I started writing New York that way. On letters, in my journal, if I'm noting down where I am, I write New York this way. So that's the inspiration behind this card. All these cards will be sold at McNally Jackson bookstores here in New York City. McNally Jackson also has a stationery store called Goods for the Study. And I approached them a little while ago and asked if they wanted to sell my Flourished fish card. And they said yes. And it was very fun to see my cards in these stores that I love, because McNally Jackson is my favorite bookstore in New York, and I love going into Goods for the Study. I've been going in for years, looking at journals and pens. So to walk into those stores, and to see my little fish on the card wall, I was just tickled to death. And what was really fun was popping in periodically after the cards were put out and seeing them disappear. And they sold very well. So that was really nice. I think this is the thing about greeting cards. If you're an artist and you create greeting cards, it's just sometimes in this field as an artist, you need a little bit of a pick-me-up here and there just to keep yourself going. And I've recognized that over the years. Sometimes the pick-me-up means, okay, I'm just going to make something completely ridiculous. I'm not going to overthink this, and I'm just going to do this, and maybe it's going to turn out as a huge mess, and it does. And then you just, scrap the materials and call it a day. Sometimes you need to just do things like that for your own creative freedom. And then other times you need just like a boost of, and this is something that I don't like to admit because it feels like a bit of weakness, but it's the truth. Sometimes you just need to know that people like your stuff. People want your stuff. I get it. This is something that I've been working on internally over the years, is like try to get rid of that. Try to create work that you love, that just you love. And if you love it and you think it's good and you're putting in the work into the technique, then one of the byproducts of that is people will love it because there's an intrinsic beauty in it. And that really has worked. But I do get this. I do understand the feeling of, you want to know that people admire what you're doing. And this is a tiny aspect of, this tiny sort of vain aspect of proving that by creating a little card, putting it out there, and then seeing it sell, or even just having a store carry your cards or buy them. And as I said, it's low stakes because you do have to put in some money into creating these, but not a lot. So that's a really, it's just a very fun aspect of this. These cards will also be available on my website for my next online sale, my Valentine's Day sale, and that sale will take place on Sunday, February the 1st at noon Eastern Standard Time. So all 3 of these cards will be available on my website in packs of 5. You can get them there if you'd like, if you don't live in New York City. I just love this setup. It's kind of meditative. I sit here, I have the stack of unfolded cards. I've like laid it out so that it's all efficient. And then I have the stacks of cotton envelopes. And then I have these Uline, if you plan on doing this yourself, I have these Uline, sells all kinds of sleeves. Resealable, polypropylene, 1.5 millimeter, no, 1.5 mil, not millimeters, of plastic sleeves that are, they're just like, they fit these cards. So I pull out a sleeve, I pick up the card and the envelope, I slip the envelope into the card, and with one fluid motion, fold down the card face down, which slips into the downward facing polypropylene envelope of sleeve. I tear off the strip that's covering the glue, fold this, and the card sealed. I think I have about 50 done, 100 more to go. That's my task currently.